Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. Talking about prayer before we go to prayer tonight. Pray then in this way. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. And I know it's been several weeks, but we talked about how it's so important for our times of prayer with the Father. It's so important that it starts with praise and worship. Because too many times we go to prayer very self-centered, focused on our own problems and cares. And when we go to prayer, praise and worship has a wonderful way of resetting our mind and resetting our heart so that our focus is back on who it should be on, the Lord. And praise and worship has a wonderful way of placing God back on the throne of your heart and the throne of your focus. And it gets your eyes off of yourself, and it gets your eyes off of your problems, and it gets your eyes onto the goodness and the greatness of your God. And so it kind of, praise and worship puts God where He belongs, and it also puts you where you belong. And so I really believe that that's why Jesus said it's important when you come before the Father and spend time with Him, start with praise and worship, even when you don't feel like it. When you don't feel like it, that's when you need to praise and worship the most. And you will, it may kind of start out a little mechanical, but pretty soon those rivers of living water will kick in. And you'll be praising and worshiping Him from the heart. Tonight we want to focus on verse 10. Another very key ingredient. And, on Sunday mornings we've been going through the Beatitudes, and we will continue to do that. But I think this Sunday morning I'm going to continue on this theme from verse 10, because you cannot underestimate the importance of this. Jesus said that when you pray, as you pray, it's very important to pray in this way: your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. When He says there in verse 10, your kingdom come, His kingdom is speaking and representing His authority. And so when you say, Father, your kingdom come, you're praying, Father, your kingdom come in me, your authority reign in my life. I want to be subject to you, Father. You are the Lord, you are the master, I am the servant, you are the potter, I am the clay. I'm recognizing that, Father, and I don't want anything for my life except your will. Now, we really need to pause there for a moment, and I've got to ask you, as I ask myself, is His will all that you want? Or do you have your own list of dreams and goals and agendas and what you want to accomplish? Is your life really surrendered to Him? Verse 10 is a prayer of surrender. Your kingdom come, your will be done. And He doesn't just stop there. On earth as it is in heaven. And so I put there in your notes, the purpose of prayer is to have the kingdom of God, the sovereign will, the sovereign purposes of God flow through us fluidly with no resistance, just as there is no resistance in heaven. When you think about heaven, and the elders and the angels crying, holy, 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 and there is no natural sun there because the Son of God is the light of it and the purity. And is there any resistance to the will of God in heaven? Does anything stand up and say, wait a minute, God, I don't know about that? There's no resistance, right? What would happen in your life if in your heart and in your mind there was absolutely no resistance to the will of God? You were just an empty, completely surrendered vessel to whatever He wanted to do. Can you imagine that? Wow. And so as we think about this, I wanted to show you, because as you go down through the saints of old had this same prayer. Andrew Murray said it this way: just as a servant knows that he must first obey his master in all things. So the surrender to an implicitly and unquestionable obedience must become the essential characteristic of our lives. The parentheses to God, I put that in there to make it clear, because we don't surrender in this way to any man, but we do surrender this way to God. And that, it's gotta be an absolute, unquestionable obedience to God. Don't ever give unquestionable obedience to any man. But to God, you're safe doing so. John Wesley, in one of his prayers, many times when he wrote in prayer, he and Charles both wrote in prose. He said, Is there a thing beneath the sun that strives with thee my heart to share? Tear it thence and reign alone, the Lord of every motion there. And so you really begin to see that the heartbeat of these great fathers in the faith, the men of God, their heartbeat was, I want to be so fluidly in the will of God that there is no resistance. God can move freely in me and through me. C.S. Lewis put it in an interesting way. He said, God claims all because he is love and must bless. He cannot bless us unless he has us. When we try to keep within us an area that is our own, we try to keep an area of death. I thought that was really good. As long as we try to stay in control of any area of our life and exercise our will and our wishes and our agenda, that truly is an area of death. And we need to understand that. Therefore, in love, God claims all. There is no bargaining with him. And so think of that, because sometimes we think, who is this God that demands my all? Who is this God that requires my unquestioned obedience and surrender? Does he have this right? Does he know what he's doing? Is he going to do me good? Just remember, he requires this for your good. And you and I will never know peace. We will never have joy. We will never have any purpose or fulfillment until we come to this place of absolute surrender to God. And so when you go to prayer, one thing that you have to see, the purpose of prayer is never for God to fulfill my will, my dreams, my desires, my ambitions, my life goals. And in the American church today, we've really been deceived to believe that God is here. And I think sometimes we think God is obligated to support my pursuit of happiness. And he's responsible to help me make it happen. Because what I want is what I want. But the purpose of prayer is just the opposite. The purpose of prayer is absolute surrender to God's will, for him to accomplish in me whatever he ordains and purposes and plans. And so the purpose of prayer is not for you to get your will done by God. The purpose of prayer is for you to surrender and die and let his will be done in you and through you. I put there this American consumerism of professional ministry. We truly have forgotten who is master and who is the slave. And unfortunately, that's the religion that sells. Because we are all into inspirational self-help. I can do it. I can make it. I can be great. I can accomplish all of my dreams and reach my destiny and bring all of this glory to myself and experience my greatness, and God's going to help me. That religion sells big. But denying self and taking up one's cross, it has no popular appeal. And you don't get a large-scale following that way. But that's what Jesus requires. I also noted there, any personal ambition, goal, or dream that is not completely dismantled and surrendered in prayer is an idol before the Lord. And I would just ask you to think about that as you go to prayer tonight. If there's any personal agenda, dream, desire, I have a plan, I have a will, I have a desire, I'm pursuing my happiness. If that's not surrendered and dismantled in prayer, it's an idol before the Lord. And it will separate you from the will of God in your life. The selfish prayer will never experience the heart of God. If you come to prayer consumed with what I want, what my will is, you're not focusing on God, you're focusing on yourself. And you'll never come to know His heart and His plan. We must die in His presence to really begin to enjoy His heart and His purposes. I'm going to stop there because we have 20 minutes left.